All right, welcome to another episode of Rangecast. We have the CEO, Spencer Rubeck, with us, and also Joe Schafer from Lippis and Mathias. And we're excited to talk to you about some different things within the cannabis industry, what it's like in the law and compliance section of the world, and just catch up with what's been going on. So
it's always good to have an attorney.
It is always good,
around the house, in the house, whenever we can have an attorney. That's always a good thing. So thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Nobody. I don't really. That's not how I'm normally greeted. So normally when I walk into rooms, people think I'm a vampire. So I appreciate you guys having me on. I've come out of the shadows. I wore my black today though. So
fair enough.
That's really fine. Yeah. So honestly, what's it been like? We'll just jump right into what's it been like since I know licenses were just approved and started getting approved in New York State. Has it been like a mad rush or crazy for you right now in these last 2 weeks?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, obviously, so we're sitting in Buffalo, obviously, and Western New York had a tough go of it in terms of the dispensary licenses. There's a lot of news about the lawsuit that hit last year that basically enjoined, meaning put a halt on the issuance of any dispensary licenses in Western New York. So, we know that there were 50 plus applicants for those initial dispensary licenses, which isn't a lot, but for the conditional program, 50 of 900 applications is a lot.
Yeah.
And we worked with a number of those applicants, and we basically had to tell them in November, hey guys, I'm glad we put all that work in, but we're on hold for the foreseeable future until this injunction gets lifted, which it did, which is great. And now we've got 14 of the 22 Western New York dispensary licenses awarded, with the last 8 coming in June.
Okay.
Wow.
We've got a lot of people coming online. What's really interesting about, because to go super basic, we are not even scratching the surface of what the New York cannabis industry is going to be. We're in the conditional market period.
It may be that way for a while, I'd imagine, right?
Yeah, and we've been this way. The first licenses overall, the first cultivation licenses were awarded in, I believe it was April of last year.
Okay.
Right. So, we had our first cultivator's license, then we got our processor's license kind of late summer. They got to come online in the fall. The issue is you got to fill out the supply chain.
Right.
Well, you only had, so as of last year, we had about 250 cultivators. Some of them didn't even get licensed until June. So to get an outdoor growing season, because this is all outdoor or greenhouse grow. There's no indoor grow in New York State right now, which is obviously a big deal.
And these licenses, the retail licenses you're talking about, those are all social equity licenses. Is that correct? Yeah.
That's exactly right. So they're called, the name of the license, which you guys will hear me use today, is CARD, C-A-U-R-D, Conditional Adult Use Retail Dispensary.
Weird spelling.
Yeah, that
license
is.
name.
Yeah. So basically that license was restricted to 2 segments of the population.
Yep.
One, were you a nonprofit that served communities disproportionately impacted by cannabis prohibition, i.e. the drug war? So the first dispensary in our state, which opened up on December 29th, 2022, was Housing Works Cannabis. Housing Works is a nonprofit based out of New York City that helped LGBTQ individuals and folks with AIDS get housing and public housing in the 80s.
Wow.
So, you want to talk about a poster child.
I know that either,
News to me.
Yeah, poster child nonprofit organization helping those communities. That's Housing Works, right?
But that's New York State. Is that rec though, or is that still just medical?
It's rec.
It's rec.
It is.
Okay,
adult
so we're
use.
there.
Okay.
I feel like I should absolutely know that, but it's
no,
news to me.
today.
But well, Spencer, I'll give you a little bit of a leeway because there's 12 dispensaries open in the state right now. I believe there's only 2 of these 12 are nonprofits. The rest are what we call the justice involved individual type of applicant. Those applicants. So you got nonprofits over here, and you've got justice involved. So a justice involved applicant, in order to even get in the door, in order to even send in your application, you needed to either you or a close family member have a cannabis conviction, not an ACD. And that was a lot of people.
It's like a federal conviction at that point.
Has to be a New York State conviction, and that's kind of
Which
important.
is crazy to me because Tyler was talking to me about this months ago, and he's like, "Dude, I'm following this social equity license. You got to look into it." And we're all like, "Well, how do we apply? How do we apply?" We're following all the things, and then come to find out, you had to have a cannabis conviction.
Been arrested,
we're like,
basically.
well, you had to have been arrested. The people who are arrested, you could speak to it. How many of them know about the program? Are there that many?
Well, and it's not just that. It's that in addition to having an arrest, you had to have at least a 10% ownership in a business that had net profits for 2 years or more. And you needed to be able to demonstrate that through tax returns.
So we're talking about like money laundering business owners at that point. I mean, what kind of percent? I mean, that's a small percentage of people that would fit that criteria.
Very small.
Right?
It is, and what we're seeing a lot, actually, in Western New York, just to use us as an example, we're seeing a lot of restaurateurs, which is interesting. So and by the way, there was an order of preference to people who they want to give these licenses to. So they wanted, obviously, the state wanted those people with the profitable businesses to be retail businesses because you want to have that consumer element. Hence why the restaurateur or a lot of this is like New York City bodegas. Do you run a convenience store? We've got a guy around here who, one of the first licensees in Buffalo, owned a bottle return spot. And so it's
a lot of ways to make money in the world.
It is. Well, yeah, well said. But so those finally we're getting those licenses. Those licenses have finally been awarded. Like I said, we have 14 in Western New York. We've got over 200 of the 300 that will be awarded in the state. But, the issue is because there's state funding involved in it, DASNY, the dormitory authority of the state of New York, has to approve your the location you're going to use for your license, or if you don't want state funding, because state funding is promised to 150 of these 300 applicants to say, hey, you got to go through DASNY, so they will approve your spot, and that approval process is not a short period of time.
Now, what do you mean by state funding? Because a lot of the things that we run into, and I know you and I have talked about this in the past, is there's not really banks that are coming to the table for anyone in the cannabis industry. It's sort of private money, or anyone. So what's the limitation? What does it mean going through the state to get funding?
So the state, I mean, the card program, I think in theory is a good program because it's trying to begin to scratch the surface of righting the wrongs of, cannabis enforcement over the years.
Yeah.
Now that's an incredibly tall task.
Yeah, it's a hefty request.
No amount of state funding or licensing will be able to get anybody on the side of being racially profiled. And I say that as a white kid who grew up in the suburbs of Buffalo. Like I recognize what I did not have to deal with, but the state's trying to solve a lot of issues all at once. What they tried to do, Spencer, to kind of get on the other side of that is they said, look, if you get the program was originally only 150 licenses. So Buffalo was going to get 11 of those 150. They expanded the program from 150 to 300. So now we have 22 of these initial social equity card licenses. The first 150, you couldn't go out and pick a location. So if I liked a location on Main Street or Elmwood or Hurdle or whatever, poppin' neighborhood, as long as it was zoned the right way, no. I have to go through DASNY. DASNY's going to pick my spot with my input. And then
selective input,
right. And so what's really interesting now is that because only half that population is getting the funding through DASNY, DASNY was basically going to become the landlord and then sublet to the dispensary. What's interesting now is what we're hearing is if you don't need the state funding, you're willing to go either traditional financing or alternative financing that isn't. And the traditional financing, very difficult to come by. There are some local banks that are getting into the space, but it's not like here's $1 million loan for on. I mean, the terms are tough.
Right.
Yeah.
The problem is, in addition, what we're learning now is that DASNY has these bubble zones where they're saying, well, hey, you don't need our financing, but we've got this property earmarked for someone who does need our financing, so you can't operate within X feet or X miles or whatever.
So they're really zoning. They're really zoning and making sure they're protecting their zones.
Yeah.
Interesting.
There's a lot of moving pieces.
That's crazy.
And the tough part is, look, I mean, the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act, MRTA, our state's legalization law was passed March 31st, 2021. That's over 2 years ago.
Yeah.
We've got 12 dispensaries open up in the state, not one in Western New York. There's a bunch like within the same 3-block radius in Greenwich Village. There's a couple in Albany and Schenectady. There's one in Binghamton. There's one in Ithaca. Some of them are only temporary locations. They're opening up for a month, and then they have to go to delivery until they find their permanent location.
Wow.
So the frustration is obviously real from the consumer's perspective, but then you got to follow the money. Like, we were talking on Soundcheck. Where's the money? Where's the money coming from? Guess what? There's no money in the market right now. So because there's no money going to the dispensary, there's no money flowing from the dispensary to the product manufacturers and from the product manufacturers to the cultivators. So cultivators are left basically having spent, at least 6 figures on outfitting their grow to change from their hemp operations to get ready for THC, but they can't get paid. And some people are 12 months, 15 months into this, if not more, because there weren't a ton of people making a lot of money in hemp, right? Growing hemp
That's
flower.
where it started, right? The cultivation started on the hemp side.
Correct.
And if you were in at that point, then you can kind of go to, creating for cannabis, right? Growing for cannabis. Okay.
That was the only cultivators licensed in the state of New York right now were those who were licensed to grow hemp, and you had to prove, and we had some very interesting ways of proving that were non-traditional. Pictures, right? Pictures in barns with literal timestamps on there. That's how we were able to get it in certain circumstances.
Sure.
Only hemp farmers are growing in the state right now. That next round of licensing, this is what I was talking about before, and again, I'm sorry to take us on such a long
No,
tangent.
please. This is good information.
The people, so if the three of us or the four of us in this room decided to apply for a license, and we weren't hemp farmers, we weren't hemp processors, and we didn't fit one of those two categories,
right?
We can't even get in until no sooner than after Labor Day this year. So that's 2.5 years. People have been chomping at the bit. I mean, we've got phone calls. I mean, we've been getting phone calls since April of 2021.
Yeah.
Right. And so, hey, what do I do? Well, I mean, we can give you a checklist and get your application materials and help you secure real estate and help you have that, municipality conversations with your municipality to make sure that they know that you're going to open up a dispensary in their borders. But by the way, we're not going to do it until maybe Jan 1, 24 at the earliest. It's tough. People aren't patient.
No.
Yeah. And honestly, what I'd like to talk about too is from the MSO side of it, because we work in other states and we have a lot of customers that own multiple locations. They also own the grow side of the business as well. And from what I understand in New York State, you can't do that. And, at least in the terms that you're talking now, could you elaborate a little bit on that? And then also, do you see that being a thing in the future, like post the social equity license? Is that a reality or what does it look like?
It's a good question. And so unique to New York, it's like Ron Burgundy, right? Unique New York. So unique to New York. That's pretty good.
I think I like that. We can get that soundbite actually and keep using it.
With the eyebrow raise too. Wherein, a Missouri, you're seeing you can be vertically integrated.
Yeah, Missouri's on fire right now too.
And it's right. And
I'm actually going out there. Yeah, we got
really
calls.
well.
Yep.
And everybody, like Missouri is becoming in a lot of the cannabis circles. I only deal with the New York market. I just hear tangentially about what's going on elsewhere. But like Missouri's becoming the crown jewel of cannabis when New York's been popping off for 2.5 years.
That's what I've been hearing.
It is.
It's amazing.
And so like New York has said over and over again, like, we are going to be the cannabis capital of the world. Like California messed it up. Like Illinois' social equity programs, this Massachusetts, the price
Still
of flowers
can't even buy a bag
tanking.
at the same time. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you can buy a bag, just not legal.
You got to call the right people.
I mean, that we can get into that later, right? I mean, there's.
I'm sure Joe knows somebody. Joe's got it right.
No, I mean, you can walk down the street, all the sticker shops,
the sticker shops.
operations. Oh my gosh,
blew me away. Like what?
Yeah, I mean, and people are like,
that really? Are they actually like bypassing sort of a law there? Or is that just like an okay thing?
It's never been okay, but it's but there was no enforcement. I mean, like I've been. It's hilarious.
There still isn't any. I don't think. I mean, it doesn't seem like there is. At least.
It's starting. There's a $16 million budget item in Governor Hochul's most recent budget that was allocated to enforcement against these shops. Because look, I always get into this. Like everybody's like, everybody walks in my office. How am I going to compete with the legacy market? You're not. You're not. Why would you?
Yeah, exactly.
Why would if that's look? I'm a JD. I'm not an MBA, but the legacy market is the legacy market. If you've been buying from somebody for 30 years, you're probably not going to stop.
Right? Yep.
If the legacy market wants to access you, these guys and gals will come above ground due to the safety and the ability to no longer have to look over their shoulder. And we've had a lot of conversations with legacy market folks. These are really, incredibly sophisticated, great business units who, if they are able to take what they want to do and what they've done and do it in the legal market, like corporate cannabis is, I don't want to say it's in trouble, but these guys have great product. And they have great business models. So long as they're able to do what they're going to do, the state needs to incentivize those guys to come above ground. Sticker shops, as far as I know, from what I can tell and from the majority that I've spoken to, they're not legacy operators. These are people who saw an opportunity and said, look, I don't see enforcement coming down the line. Some people think it's legal. I get phone calls.
That's why I asked, because I genuinely thought it was an okay thing to do. I didn't know it was.
It's
okay enough to do it, obviously, if you want to play a little bit gray.
Cracking down on it till now.
Right. And so the issue that these guys run into is the state early on, I think it was May of 21, sent out cease and desist letters and said, you can't do this. Like, you
By the
can't-
way,
by the way,
you can't actually do this, even though you are.
What's something on a piece of paper, right? And it's,
Yeah.
the threats were fines and you don't get a license. Well, I don't care when's the next license going up.
Right.
I can make, 6 figures a month, which we're hearing is not unreasonable for these guys. 6 figures a month for the next 2.5 years. Do I really need a license?
Yeah.
I mean, they're
That's where it becomes tough. You're going to spend all that money to get a license to do it right. Go kind of through the loopholes. You have the POS side of things too. It's all money after that. I mean, getting the license is one thing, but then after you have the license to actually open the store, I mean, I couldn't put a number to it, but it's a lot. We have customers who spend a lot of money.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, we went to Michigan. They said, I mean, just the minimum amount to open a dispensary was $1 million. The minimum. That's like the least amount you need to open a dispensary was $1 million. And I'm like, and they had obviously partners and investors. But like coming from the other side of it, like that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And not being able to get it from a bank.
For sure.
Yeah.
And then, but that still goes back to the question is,
Right.
how do you get multiple? Can you do the multiplication thing? Is there a limit on that? And then even further, will New York State ever be in a place where brands can subsidize their costs by growing in that state and then supplying that store? Whether or not they own the stores is, it's a separate subject there, but kind of where do you see that happening? Because it just seems so immature at this point, where the rest of the country is and it's developing, as we just talked about Missouri, MeCan. We just had a call about MeCan last week. What do you think, man? Like, where's that going to be?
Yeah, right now the state's really sticking to vertical integration because they got to roll out initial licensing as it's written. If they need to change down the road because it's the operators aren't making money. But right now you're either on the supply side or you're on the retail side. So you're either growing and you can stack those licenses. So I don't know where the MSOs look at this. My guess is it would probably be more on the production side than on the retail side. But look, we can control from nursery to cultivation to processing to distribution, and then we'll sell it to a trusted partner.
Right.
But you can't own the entire supply chain unless you have a micro business license. But the way I look at a micro business license is it's either a craft grow license or an agritourism license.
But is that a way to be able to do that? To be
It is.
essentially supply your own inventory?
Right.
Okay.
But from an MSO's perspective,
well, sure. That's
canopy caps, outdoor grow, 10,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Mixed use, 5,000 square feet. Indoor grow, 3,500 square
Easily.
feet. And there's plant limits, and then there's harvest limits, and you can't bring in. I think it's right now as it's written in the regs, you can't bring in more than 500 pounds of somebody else's product. So it's either got to be all grown by you, and I'm saying to these guys, look. I look at micro, at least in this initial iteration, as a hospitality license.
No,
What
does micro mean though? What essentially is micro?
Seed to sell. Seed to sell. So it is the only vertically integrated license. So I can plant my seeds and I can sell it direct to consumer, and I don't have to go through a distributor and sell it to a dispensary. I can, but I don't have to. That's why they put those canopy caps on. But I look at it honestly like it's a farmer's market license. It's I'm going to make like a couple trays of brownies a year and sell tinctures to my friends.
Yeah,
It's not. Now there are people who will be able to take advantage of it and do a good job. But think of it. The easiest way that I frame the New York State cannabis industry is it's all based on like the craft beer industry, because the Office of Cannabis Management, OCM, is a brother sister entity, or will be once it's fully fleshed out, to the State Liquor Authority, to SLA.
Okay.
Right? So what you see, like,
interesting.
Think of Vermont.
Really interesting.
Think of Vermont, or think of Buffalo. Right? We have so many great craft breweries around here, and like
So
there was
many.
a new one popping up all the time.
Yeah.
But what they want is they want the lines, the same lines that you see out the door at the Alchemist in Vermont to go buy Hetty Topper and Focal Banger. What Burlington, Vermont did with its like now internationally known craft beer scene. And what we see like when these, special can releases. My parents live in Orchard Park at, 42 North or whatever.
Yeah.
Big Ditch does a new one. I got married.
Wayland's just opened up. Yeah.
And it's like all these guys, they've capitalized on that because they're treating cannabis just like alcohol. And by the way, that vertical integration prohibition stems from alcohol. Have you ever been to a Budweiser bar? Have you ever been to a Guinness bar? It's a federal law.
Wow.
Okay.
So it's called a tied house law. But we can talk alcohol.
No. No, so it's interesting.
Yes,
So I was
it really
just in New York City last week at the Luxury Meets Cannabis conference, and a couple of the panels that were going on actually discussed infused beverages. So it was all infused beverage based, and that's really 1% of the cannabis market. I mean, from a retail side, it's just not a thing. It is out there. You go to Colorado, you go to some markets that are saturated, there's infused beverages. And a lot of the discussions on the law side of it was, when are we going to get to the point where at a bar you can actually order an infused beverage instead of alcohol? And I kind of just wanted to throw that at you and see if How far away is that? I mean, is that even a thing that you think is possible?
On-site consumption, man.
Yeah.
That's what it is. On-site, there's a special type of New York license called an on-site consumption license.
Whoa.
And
I actually did not. That was not discussed. So that's news to me.
It is. I mean, it
has to be under like 3% or 2.5%. There's like a limit to it from what I did hear. Yeah.
It's your cigar bar.
That's crazy.
I don't think they're going to allow. There's not going to be alcohol sales. So you go in and you get one or the other. Right.
That's a zoning issue, right? So you can't at that point.
It's an insurance issue too. Like I think
if you follow the money,
follow
the money. There's probably a lot of issues.
But I mean, the most exciting conversations that I've had are you going to do a mocktail bar? Hell yeah, mocktail. Infused mocktails. I mean, look, like. I represent one of our clients. It has a really good, like one of the best selling. It was previously a hemp derived THC beverage. Now they're launching in New York, and like
that's sweet.
I mean that's what brought me into the space in the first place. Like I got my hands on a Lagunitas Hi-Fi hops and on the West Coast in like 2019, and I was like, this tastes like an IPA, but it's got like 5 milligrams in it. Like what is this nectar? And here I am, 5 years later.
How do I enjoy it? How does it feel?
Yeah, and it's I don't know. I think that space is really interesting. But what we're seeing, and I don't know if they talked about this at your conference, I'd be interested to hear, like, where do the alcohol beverage manufacturers? Because we're starting to see like Lagunitas started on the West Coast. You've got Harpoon, who just released in New York.
Oh, did they?
Beacon Skiff, which is 1911 cider. If you guys have seen, they also are a distillery. They're also one of our first conditional processors. Their heirloom beverages are not just they're not just in adult use. They actually have a hemp-derived version that they're selling to consumers.
It's interesting. Wow. It's from the brands that I saw and from the panel that I talked to. These are really cannabis businesses that ventured this way. It wasn't a alcohol background. It was more of like they sort of explored it. One of the bigger challenges in infused beverages is having the ability to reduce the shelf life or maintain a shelf life. It's very small with an infusion, so it's kind of probably why it hasn't hit the marketplace. Your time to sell is pretty immediate.
Oh,
right?
They go bad pretty quickly?
Yeah, it goes bad pretty quickly. Or it doesn't work. It's not the same effect. Like that 2 or 3%, THC that's in it.
Won't be as strong if you leave on the shelf.
I'm talking like 3 or 4 days. So, you got to have a lot of data. You got to kind of do the right thing at that point. I could be wrong in that exact time frame, but that was one of the bigger issues from an investment standpoint, why people haven't broken through it yet.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
cool.
Spoiled product's an interesting thought because, think of the dispenser. I mean, just bringing it back to New York a little bit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You got people who harvested in September who still haven't sold their products because there were no dispensaries.
Yeah, I mean, what's the shelf life of weed, really?
I mean, it depends on how you store it.
Depends on how it's stored, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. So that's really interesting too. And I'm thinking, I was going to ask this question because my first time meeting you, how'd you get into the cannabis part of law? You were saying you had an infused beverage and you just it took off from there?
Yeah, this is honestly the fact that, thanks for asking. I mean, it's a really kind of hilarious story. Like I was, if you would ask people in high school and college, like if this is what I'd be doing, maybe they'd say yes. I don't know. Maybe they know me better than me. I would have laughed at you, man. I would have been like, how, like to be one of the better known cannabis. I say that like, I'm not trying to sound like an arrogant jerk, but
I mean, you are better, one of the better.
I am an arrogant jerk. Thanks. It's on the record.
Yeah, we got it.
No, I mean, I don't know. I think the opportunity presented itself in 2019 when I was working. I was a litigator before this. I went to law school to be the president of the Buffalo Bills, and my application's still sitting out there. I don't know. Maybe they'll call me in a little bit. Right now, I'm going with this cannabis side of things, but no, I mean. I was a litigator. I got staffed on a case representing like this conglomerate of hemp farmers. And I was looking at this and seeing like what's going to happen in this industry. What I realized was look, like we're all same age, young, handsome dudes in the room, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's kind of a younger industry. And in at least in law, from what I've been able to tell, you really got to work your way up and you got to pay your dues and you got to make partner after 8 to 10 years and you got to build your book and you kind of got to wait to be who you are. Mm-hmm. I'm not a patient dude. And frankly, what I also realized, in the end, the work speaks for itself, right? You got to do good work. That's number one. But a lot of these operators were younger folks too, and they wanted to talk to somebody who was their similar age, B, knew the industry and was passionate about it, but also wasn't going to look down their nose at it, right? And I think that there are still folks out there. The stigma's real.
It really is,
right?
Especially in the older generation. What you're saying.
Yep.
And I was like, it's funny, like, I don't know, like my dad's an old deadhead, but like we didn't really talk about it. I just kind of figured it out on my own. And like
it's one of those things you figure out too. You just kind of put the pieces together as you get older, a little more experience. Like, all right, this is how it works. I got it.
It took me a little bit longer than it probably should have, which means like I'm kind of a naive person. But I don't know. It came about. I saw the opportunity. I've been just kind of chasing it recently, and it's been super fun. And I think we're lucky in Western New York to have a really supportive community. I know. Look, your guys' footprint's national, international. Maybe forgive me if I'm undercutting the Range brand, but like you guys get to deal in so many markets.
Right.
My goal is get to know Western New York. If we can help other people around. We work primarily with folks out of Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse a little bit. We've got some guys kind of outside of the capital region as well. We haven't jumped into New York City that much because we haven't really had to. Like we like to take care of our people. We had some institutional clients who were in this and kind of recognize our firm and the talent that we had to go after it. And it's really just to be able to see these guys, like to watch them grow up as adult use companies and like rec can companies is like, it's pretty cool.
That is really cool.
And so, getting the experience of doing deals, helping with licensure, like helping people run through the initial compliance obligations, like there is so much out there. There's a lot of work for us to do, but we've been able to do it, at low cost, which is good. We're in Buffalo, we're not in New York, right? So we're like a third of the price of everybody else.
Of everything.
Give me a call.
Yeah.
Just kidding. No. But, we do it well. And I think like we've got a team that really cares about it. And I think I've been proud to be a part of it, but also just like, develop my own brand. And I think once you get out there and you guys,
especially in the cannabis space, you've done a good job of that. People just know people.
Fun.
Yeah. It's all just humans and vibes at the end of the day. It's really all it is. Right. And so like after we get past the licensing stage, say it's 2027, right? What do you think you're going to do at that point? Is it
personally or
personally, or like I guess you can put in the legal aspect too. Like, what's that going to look like? Is it going to be a continuation of, is it changing from you can't supply your own store? That may change. There's MSOs, there's acquisitions. Like we see M&A all over the country, which you and I talk about a lot. Don't know when New York State's going to get to that point, but just kind of curious. Like after the licensing phase, what do you see as the next progressive step for cannabis in New York State?
Hopefully there's no, like the price of flower doesn't tank because the state's been doing a good job of taking care of its businesses, right? And I think it's tough for MSOs right now because the state is really focused on supporting New York State small businesses.
Yep.
They want to craft cannabis industry like we talked about. They want to simulate, they want to not simulate, they want to recreate craft beer here in craft cannabis.
Right.
How sustainable is that? Well, look, I love drinking hay burners, but I can only drink 3 of those before I
feel
can't
some type of way.
function.
Two you don't remember the third.
It's not exactly.
You don't remember the third.
I know that feeling all too well. Yes.
Yes.
But at the same time, mass produced. Like I love Molson. Like Molson's.
Yeah. You're a Molson guy. Molson, I don't know. I wouldn't have guessed.
I love Molson's. Blue. Like you grew up on Blue, but recently, like as in the past 8 years, like I've just been tried and true a Molson guy. Molson's not going anywhere. And what I think the state needs to really work on is, okay, yes, we can protect our businesses while also allowing, I think of like the Kivas or the GTIs or Cookies or whoever, right?
Yep.
These guys want to get in. They are allowed to have a space in the market.
You would think, right?
You would think. And you would think that it would also be good for the state because people are going to go to the store and they're going to want, they're going to want to see runs. Dude, you can go to the gas station down the street from my house and buy a Cookies backpack and a sweatshirt, which I don't.
So I guess that's where I'm confused though, right? So like we obviously they want that. How do we get to that place, or is it not? It's just MSOs aren't allowed. You have to be a New York State resident. Like at what point can an MSO, which we work with a ton of them, when can they come to?
They can come in this next round of licensing.
They can.
Yeah.
Okay.
So post Labor Day.
So that's not social equity then. That's a different.
No. So there will be the social equity component is there's always going to be a social equity component to any license, right? So the goal is to award at least 50% of licenses to social and economic equity applicants, right? So minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, distressed farmers, service-disabled vets, people impacted by cannabis prohibition and enforcement, prior arrests. There's different levels of priority. We talked about same level, but the category for social equity broadens a lot more than the card license. Card was a very small sample.
Got it. Makes sense.
Social equity program is more, but then if you're an MSO, you can
absolutely come apply for a license and get in the space.
Yeah.
Right?
So, but that's going to come with permanent licensing. You just have to have a social equity program that's part of your application, right? Or social equity plan, excuse me. So it's, are you going to give a certain percentage of profits to a local nonprofit? Are you going to do like a community cookout? Are you going to help pack backpacks? Like there's no limit to what a social equity plan can look like. And frankly, an MSO could probably do a heck of a lot better of a job with that because they have the experience doing this in other states when they've already had to jump through these hoops.
Of course.
They should be able to set the standard. And so I think it's a tough balance. I mean, the state's walking a tightrope in terms of like, yes, we want to protect New York businesses. Yes, we want craft cannabis. Yes, New York, like, yeah. I was about to start swearing, and I don't know what the audience is like, but people still want to buy the gummies that they bring back here from California and Massachusetts, drive to Massachusetts for,
right?
Because it's a good brand that they know. New York brands, it's still competition, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you want that competition, and you want to see those good brands here, because if this is going to be the cannabis capital of the world,
you're going to have brands.
You got to bring them in. Yeah. So right now, no, probably on the supply side, so they can get their brands on dispensary shelves.
Sure.
And then if they want to vertically integrate, we'll probably see that later down the line. But right now, it's not permissible.
Yep, that makes sense.
All right, so I wanted to ask you, because I saw I checked out the LinkedIn, had to do a little bit of research. Adjunct professor at UB, huh?
Yeah, let's talk about that. Actually, I don't know anything about the past life, the pre-attorney life.
So I graduated from UB Law in 2018.
Okay.
And kind of what I referred to earlier, I was on I did a do-it-yourself sports law concentration. So I took every class that had to do with the legal side of professional and amateur athletics.
Okay.
In my second and third years of law school, you write this very boring, long essay called a comment, which is basically commentary on some sort of issue in the legal world, and then you submit it for publication. And I was one of 4 student essays to get selected it was just internal. It was like I was one of 4 of 30 submissions for the University of Buffalo's law review.
Still cool.
And I wrote it on pay for play in college athletics. And so it was, at the time, if you guys are familiar, it was like post Ed O'Bannon case, which was student athletes can make money off their name, image, and likeness. But what does that mean will the NCAA allow them to? And also, should college athletes be paid? So there was another case that was actually about the transfer rules. So if you're a revenue generating athlete, so football, men's and women's basketball, baseball, and hockey, men's hockey, and at the time you were prohibited, if you wanted to transfer from your Division I school to another Division I school, you had to sit out a year. And I said that was illegal under antitrust rules, because that was impermissible. And because the bylaw violated, it was actually anti-commerce. It was against and we saw this, Jalen Hurts transferred from Alabama to Oklahoma and was, I believe in a college football playoff team that year, right? So he was a instant starter, and Oklahoma was a top 5 or 6 team that year, right? That wouldn't have been allowed under the NCAA of when I was in law school. They needed somebody to teach I teach a book club. It's a 1 credit, it's a 1 credit class on should college athletes be paid, how we got to how the NCAA became this this billion-dollar industry,
literally,
and whether or not the student athletes deserve a piece of that pie. So that's
pretty unique. That's cool.
That is.
Yeah, it was cool. I was a blogger my 3rd year of law school, because The three jokes about law school, or they joke about the 3 years of law school is first year they scare you to death, second year they work you to death, and third year they bore you to death. And so my third year I was looking for something to do, and like what's really cool, and I do this, to this day in writing about cannabis. That's kind of how I started to get my name out there on the cannabis side of things. I just wrote
LinkedIn a lot. You're really active on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, yeah, and I mean, apologies for anybody who follows me on LinkedIn.
No, I actually saw. I follow you
so.
now. I saw your you do post a lot, which is great.
I got muted. Awesome. That's a good thing, I think. But yeah, so I wrote it. I wrote this one article. In addition, it was before that thing got published. It was called "Hey NCAA, This Is Your Fault," and it was a blog piece, and it was about when DeAndre Ayton. They had like the FBI investigation, right? And like everybody's trying to figure out what's going on. There's these alleged payments, and then all of a sudden it comes out that Sean Miller, Arizona head coach, is directly tied to a $100,000 cash payment to DeAndre Ayton to go to the University of Arizona. And the Yahoo story breaks, and there's like not a ton of it was maybe discredited, but in the moment it was like number one future number one overall pick, who by the way UB beat that year in the first round, which was pretty cool.
Ironic, yeah.
Like everybody's like, oh my God, this is Sean Miller's fault. Like this is the shoe company's fault, and I just said no. The title of the article was, "Hey NCAA, this is your fault," and it's like the NCAA has these rights under the antitrust laws to do whatever the heck it wants without any challenge, and they can dismiss any lawsuit. They run their own shop. They have their own stuff as long as they follow their own rules. The problem is they don't enforce their own rules. So if the famous Jerry Tarkanian quote is, the NCAA is so mad at Kentucky, they just gave Cleveland State another 2 years probation. And that's how the NCAA operates. I was a college tennis player. I played 4 years of Division I tennis at Davidson, at Steph Curry University, right? Like that's.
Were you there when he was there?
His senior year would have been my freshman year. So, but I was the Steph recruiting class. Epic. So like, they had their tournament run in March of 2008. I'm getting recruited from fall of 2007, and then I signed my letter of intent, my national letter of intent in November of 2008. So like, Steph is I'm a Warriors fan. Like Steph is very much. I'm not a fair weather fan by any stretch of the imagination. Like I'm from Buffalo. I grew up in Orchard Park, like right down the street from the stadium. Like I root for teams that lose, except for that basketball team. But Steph's had a huge impact on my life, and it's like, think of a guy like Steph. I mean, he's been able to have such an amazing career. Obviously, he's a top player of all time.
Yeah.
What if he only has that moment to capture? Like that could be his biggest potential moneymaker in his entire life, is those 10 days in March. And so, I mean, I always come down on the college athletes should be paid, and that's we don't have to get into it on this.
I was going to ask you what your
I
agree with you,
unwavering. And it was interesting. Like I got that article got retweeted by Jay Billis, and then all of a sudden, like you guys are in marketing, so like the don't read the comments. I read every comment. And they were like, this guy's a trained monkey spitting BS. Like, this guy doesn't know what the F he's talking about.
Sounds like the internet a little bit.
Yeah, it does.
I was like, man, this is wild. I was like, I like people to like me. Like, these people hate me. And they don't even know me. I wrote like 7 paragraphs, man. But because Billis retweeted, it was like, you think you're Jay Billis Jr.? I was like, hell yeah, dude, Jay Billis Jr., man, let's go. This is cool. I'll be on ESPN tomorrow. I was not on ESPN, but it was just kind of this. I became like this crusader for college athletes' rights my third year of law school, because like we had a blog, and that's kind of how
you just kind of took it over.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess there's themes to my life in terms of I don't know. I think every time I try to force it, it doesn't necessarily work, and then when I kind of let things come to me, and this cannabis thing,
it's usually the way it works.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We don't need to get that metaphysical on the podcast.
No, that's awesome though.
It's true.
So your third year wasn't boring.
Yeah, no, it got real interesting for sure.
There you go.
So then, from the shift from sports blogger on the legal side, how did you get into cannabis? Was that a thing that happened at Lippis, or kind of talk about how the actual entry into cannabis for you, sort of happened?
Yeah, I mean, what's really cool, and it's not, I mean, I don't broadcast it, but I mean, probably a third to half of my practice is I work for a number of minor league sports teams. Like we do a ton of work for minor league sports teams, helping them, because you've got leagues and big time teams. They have their own in-house counsel.
Sure. Yep.
Minor league teams, and a lot of times they're ownership groups who own multiple teams. You can make an impact as an outside counsel, and they're looking to a firm for not just one guy. They're looking to the team. So me and you know, a few folks on our team, but I mean, it's a really awesome. I have for a lawyer, I have a very immature job description. Like I'm a corporate attorney with specialty I'm a corporate mergers and acquisitions attorney. Okay, great. Get in line. There's a million of me, and most people hate us, right? But I have regulatory specialties in cannabis and alcohol, and the other half of what I do is sports related. Like, I think my 25-year-old self is pretty proud of me right now.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
So I mean, I kind of do a little bit of both. But I mean, the cannabis stuff, I mean, like we talked about before, it's just really taken off. And I think that for whatever reason, people have decided to listen to the legal advice and the compliance stuff that I've had to say over the past couple of years. So I'm grateful for that. But at the same time, like, I don't know, we're all kind of self-taught in the industry, and I lean heavily on the other folks. Like by no stretch of the imagination am I holding myself out as like some like savant. I'm not. Like, we all work together. It's super fun. I'm just, you know, I think my visibility in a lot of parts comes because people called lawyers first. And what I'm excited, like, you know, I've got Mario from Forsetti's sweatshirt on today. Like, I mean, he gave an awesome presentation. Like, people like me are going to become a lot less important, and that's a good thing. Like, we need the ancillary services providers. People are going to need range so much more because we only have 14 dispensaries that are licensed and 0 online.
Yeah.
So what's going to differentiate the dispensaries in Western New York? Well, obviously, when somebody comes here, because there's a lot of opportunity in Western New York, and I'm transitioning this a little bit, but like, hopefully it's for your guys' benefit.
Yeah.
Like,
look at that.
There's going to be like 100 plus dispensaries, maybe 200 dispensaries in this area. And if this craft cannabis idea actually works, what's going to happen? All right, well, Western New York becomes a cannabis tourist destination. And then they're going to hop on the internet and try to figure out, where should I go?
Where should we go? Yeah.
And then it's like, well, I have a Facebook page. Nice, man. Yeah. Like, people call me, they're like, should I have social media? I'm like, I mean, I don't.
I'd love to hear Joe's take on that.
Yeah,
phone call. Just be a fly on the wall for that feedback.
The phone calls are funny. Like, some of them are great, and people are like, hi, I have a real question because I've read the regulations. And some people are like, so I own a dispensary. And I'm like, where is it? They're like, oh, it's in Buffalo. And I'm like, you don't own a dispensary. I said, do you have a hemp dispensary license? No. Like on the
yeah. Like, you're the
I don't have a hemp dispensary license. What's a hemp dispensary license? I go, okay. What do you sell?
Weed.
What do you think I sell, man? I'm like, okay. What do you want my help with? Sounds like you got this all figured out, man.
Right.
And then it just completely falls apart from there. But it's just, I don't know, man. I hope the regulation sorts itself out, because, like, in the end, we need to get rid of the sticker shops. It's gonna be like whack-a-mole for a long time. The nice part is we're not in the middle of New York City, so you're not competing with like 2,500 of them.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot. At every corner, there's probably 1 or 2. It seems like.
Yeah. Around here, the hope is that, you know, the folks who are doing it, look, the penalties are humongous now. It's like $10,000 a day. They can fine you, and the issue that these guys don't realize, the tax side of things.
Can that be 10,000 in the rears too? Like, from the day you're caught, all the time you've been open, so you're actually kind of at risk. If we're doing a 3-month program, that's.
And how do you find out? Oh, I've been open since April. Like, where? How can you get receipts? I don't know. Your Facebook page?
Yeah.
It's kind of the first place to start.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, and
scary
they know
for them.
The state. I mean, when the state focuses in on you,
yeah, when they come,
they want your money.
Oh yeah,
and the problem is,
especially New York,
they're going to get it, and they're going to get it because they got to finance these build-outs, and they got to finance the social equity program.
Yep.
So,
I have a question for you.
Cool.
It's like, with everything that goes on with compliance, and you've obviously been a blogger, and you said you're LinkedIn, you're always posting. How do you stay on top of all the information? Because there's a ton of it. And, like, what do you choose to post, and, like, how do you go about that? Because that's, like, you obviously you're working in sports, you have the minor league teams, you have that, you have cannabis, and then, you know, the corporate side, you said mergers and acquisitions, but everyone does that. But at the same time, like, how do you stay on top of where do you get information from and consistently posting about it? Because it's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, if you guys want to make a sales pitch as to how I can do that better, I'd appreciate it. But
not today, at least.
Yeah. Honestly, LinkedIn is a really good tool for me because, and I think I learn more about the national cannabis industry on LinkedIn than I do anywhere else.
Yeah,
like
for
that's
sure.
where I feel like I can actually, I don't know. I'm a New York specialist right now, and I would like to expand that. I guess to answer your question from before, like I think that our adjacent states, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Jersey, like we do a little bit of work in Jersey, which is fun. We have a little bit of stuff in Connecticut. My family's from Vermont, so they're kind of coming online. I would love to expand our practices, and we've got offices in we actually just added a Cleveland office, which is really cool.
That's awesome.
Like I think Ohio's like starting to tip a little bit, and that's where I kind of see us. As we also have a Florida office in Jacksonville, and Jacksonville slash St. Augustine in February sounds a heck of a lot better than like the blizzard slash hurricane that we dealt with around here.
Right.
So, but yeah, LinkedIn's really good for the national stuff. And then, I mean, the nice part is like, there's only so many of us in New York State cannabis right now who are actually kind of getting after it. And I think that there's a decent amount of information share. Like I'm not like getting tipped off early. Like I think some people are, and like good for them. Hey, you're working your connections. I don't have those connections yet to Albany because we live 4 hours away and I don't live in New York State or New York City near the regulators. But I mean, I'm getting pretty good at reading the tea leaves and knowing when stuff's coming down the pipeline. And, like I said before, the community is really strong. So if I know something, I'll reach out to Mario, reach out to Tyler and Mark. Like the lines of communication, especially in Western New York, are strong, and I really appreciate that.
Have you seen a state open kind of like the same way New York State is, or is this kind of just completely different? If you do a lot of national research, you kind of see a lot of places do it differently. Yeah. Is New York State just kind of an odd one in that race, or is it similar to something you've seen in the past?
I think that the 2-year timeline is actually not uncommon. I could be wrong about that, but you're also seeing like Jersey started flying, but Jersey also was MSO focused, right? And they were like, we want, like, I think Acreage had a botanist in there right away, and like a lot of the adult use companies in New Jersey were the medical companies in New York. So the medical companies, they're allowed to flip. By the way,
they can go from medical to rec.
They can just
flip it. Yeah.
They can stay medical and be rec. It used to be OCM was going to keep them out for 3 years, which they were not happy because they're paying 7 to 8 figures a year to keep those licenses, and they're not making a ton of money. But they're vertically integrated, so where do you stand on that?
Sure.
What that is now since changed. Actually, at the last Cannabis Control Board meeting, they're going to be able to flip that switch a lot earlier in December of this year. So that could be a solution to the MSO issue that you asked earlier, Spencer.
That for sure could. Yeah.
Maybe if you want to get in the medical program, if they expand the medical program, there's a ton of M&A in the New York medical space as well. Like these guys are buying each other up and selling assets. It's an interesting game. I don't play it because I don't represent any of those guys, but it's interesting to watch from afar because they're all just kind of jockeying for position for when that switch gets flipped. Well, they were all obviously and reasonably upset for 3 years post, like it would have been 25. Yep. Now they're on their first one's online in 23, with the next 2 being allowed to go online by, I believe it's June of 24.
A lot of our MSOs actually acquired medical. That was like one of their targets for a while, was medical. Grab them early before it flips to rec in certain states.
Yeah, so
I won't disclose, but yeah, it does. Sure. That's a target. Yeah.
I think that strategy will play out well in New York, obviously with these timelines. So I guess to answer the original question, is 2 to 2.5 years a long time for a retail consumer who really wants to do it? Yeah, it stinks. I want to go and buy weed water. I want to go and buy, whatever, my favorite edibles. Like, I mean, shout out to weed water, by the way. If you guys haven't tried it.
Is that a real thing?
Weed water, man.
That's a good name.
Made out of Rochester. Awesome product. It's starting to hit the shelves. Check it out. Also, proud of our guys, our Buffalo guys, Bison Botanics. They're the #1 selling edible in New York City right now.
Wow.
Come on, really?
Cool. So yeah, weed water's
great news.
Weed water's made in Rochester by No Wave. And Bison's got the #1 selling edibles. At least last time that that was, I think it was
impressive.
Like a couple weeks ago. It's awesome.
Awesome.
Made right here on Military Road.
Let's go.
So like a mile and a half from my house, which is awesome. Those guys are great. Sean and Justin are awesome people, and I think they speak to the community, as are the No Wave guys. I'm lucky to know them and get to work in the space with them. But I mean, look, New Jersey is interesting, right? Because I got a call from a client who lives in New Jersey, but she has a New York license, and she said, New Jersey's just got rid of all their cultivation caps. Anybody, if you have a good business plan, you can be a cultivator in New Jersey. Interesting, because they were limiting the number of dispensaries. They were limiting who's in the market, and they're like, we need more weed. Let's grow it. Anybody? Let's go.
Follow the money there, I'm sure. It's part of the reason. Yeah.
Wow.
Sweet.
Well, I mean, this has been really informational for me because I'd learned a lot. Spencer's been.
And honestly,
in the
we've
business
talked a
lot
bunch
more.
of times too, Joe, and this is, it really helped, man. And thank you. Learned a lot.
Yeah, well, appreciate your guys' patience here. I know that I had a lot to say, and hopefully didn't talk over you guys too much, but it was awesome being in here, and let's do it again soon. That was a blast.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah, we actually have to. Another episode of Range Cast. We're thankful for Joe for coming on. Hopefully this is tidbits information that can help everybody in New York State and everywhere else, and we'll definitely have you back on soon.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Yep.